So we actually wheeled him out each morning wearing a Hannibal Lecter mask, and we thought it was best to take as many precautions as possible. And
Imagine you're a director and you get the chance to hire a two-time Oscar winner to be the key performer in your new movie. Of course you say yes. You can't say no, unless the actor in question is Kevin Spacey. Now, we've all read the headlines, we've all seen the court cases. We know that he's been accused of some pretty unsavory activities over the years. And we also know that he's been blacklisted more or less across of Hollywood. Except one filmmaker, Michael Hall, decided to take a chance on Kevin Spacey. He cast him in a movie, Peter 5'8". It's available now on video on demand. And Spacey stars as a mysterious stranger who's been stalking a realtor who seems to have both a drinking problem and a pretty cloudy past. I'll say no more. Of course, it's a perfect role for Kevin Spacey. He gets to do a little bit of music in the film. He's menacing. He's charismatic. He could even be romantic as well. I mean, that's what Kevin Spacey does. He's among the best of the best. And he's been blocked from doing anything on screen for quite some time because of all these court cases and all these accusations. So why did Michael hire him in the first place? Was there blowback about hiring him and having him as part of this ensemble? Would he do it again? And are there actors that he might not hire who have been accused of what Spacey has been accused of, or even much worse? These are all complicated questions that we get into in depth in this conversation. But I really did appreciate his candor. I like the fact that he took a chance on Kevin Spacey. And we all don't know what happened in Kevin Spacey's past. He may be as guilty as anyone. He may be innocent of all charges. We just don't know. But the courts have played out. He's been found innocent twice. And I think he should be allowed back to act before cameras, assuming he behaves himself, assuming that he's a good citizen, on set, off set, and he's able to move on. That's just my choice. You can feel differently. I understand it completely. And the fact that we can turn a blind eye to certain activities behind the scenes and yet judge people for other activities, well, there's a bit of hypocrisy baked into the cake here as well. But give this conversation a chance. Check out what Michael Hall has to say about the film, about Kevin Spacey, and whether he'd work with him again after this experience. I think it's all fascinating, and I think it's a good conversation to have. And by the way, if you're looking for reviews of Peter 5'8", good luck. Now, here's a tease of the film.
I'm actually in the market for a house of my own in the region here. You want something?
Just you.
When I went to check it out and see what other critics have said about it, I couldn't find much of anything. And yes, we get into that with Michael as well. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation, this bonus episode of the Hollywood in Toto podcast with writer-director Michael Hall. I think it's fascinating. This is a really important conversation, not just about Kevin Spacey, not just about Peter 5'8", but where we are as a culture, how we accept artists, whether we're able to forgive, and where we're able to move on after things have been gone on in our past that maybe some of us are not very proud of. Check it out. Well, Michael, thanks for joining the show. I want to start with Peter 5'8", the movie, because this is film noir. This feels retro and a throwback. And I don't think we see much of that these days. And it was rather engaging. It took me a few minutes to get into the rhythm of the film, which is fun for a critic because we see so many cookie cutter movies. Talk about that element, that style that you bring to it, because again, it's so interesting, and obviously it was something personal to you.
Thanks, Christian. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. This is intended to be an irreverent, eccentric film. This is as much as what it is what it isn't, and what it isn't is a gritty neo-noir. So that was our intention, was to make something unusual, irreverent, eccentric. When I was growing up, the films that I loved were the unusual films. In fact, that was the litmus test. What was the strangest film of the year? That was probably my favorite film. So Peter 5'8" is by design an irreverent, absurdist noir. You can almost define a spectrum with something like Carl Reiner's Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid on one end of the spectrum. And we're not that far. We're not all the way to the pure farcical end of the spectrum, but there is a tongue-in-cheek quality to the film.
Yeah. Now, obviously, when you get a chance to hire a two-time Oscar winner, you say, yes, please. I've seen you interviewed in other places, and you talked about how Kevin Spacey brings a comedic element to things, even off set, off camera, when when cameras are not rolling, he just has that spark to him.
Yeah.
How important was having that in the story? Because obviously his character is also menacing too.
Yes, absolutely, and it was finding that balance between menace
Mhm.
and humor, and Kevin brings a lyrical quality to it. I mean, like the film itself, which I do consider absurdist
Mhm.
in a sense. Kevin is an absurdist personality,
Mhm.
and he brings that quality to it. So I wanted that glimmer of absurdity and humor to be shining
Mhm.
through this film. And people who've seen it, it's a divisive film. You either kind of resonate with the tone that you
Mhm.
described, or you reject it. And if you reject it, you say it's campy. I thought,
Mhm.
whatever pejorative you want to use. But those that get the film, I've had people come up to me and say it feels like an episode of The Twilight Zone. It feels like a 50s TV show. It has that 50s serial quality. And that was by design.
Yeah.
I think one of the trappings of modern film noir is that it loses its connection to the source DNA. Even a film, let's take Guillermo's Nightmare Alley. I thought it was fantastic. It's probably Guillermo's best film. It doesn't feel like a 1940s film. These are big sets. These are big lights. These are the
Mhm.
cameras flying around. It's a whole different thing. Now, what we wanted with Peter 5/8 was a smallness. We actually went out of our way to make it
Mhm.
small, to give it that 50s TV serial feel, or even more specifically, the 40s B movie feel. So these are small sets. These are a small number of characters inhabiting this environment, and they're acting in a melodramatic style. I wanted the acting style to be naturalism being the dominant style, which New Hollywood ushered in, and of course has given us so many fantastic films. But I don't think that's all that cinema is. Cinema's it can be an abstract canvas, and I wanted to explore that, and I wanted the acting style to match the source material. So if you watch a film like Active Violence was a huge influence on Peter 5/8. Fantastic film. And if you watch Active Violence, you can watch Peter 5/8 afterwards, and it'll actually tonally flow, if you
Mhm.
will.
Yeah.
And Kevin, to my delight, is a huge film buff, and I know you've spoken with him, Christian, and he's immersed in film history just as much as your average cinephile is, and he understood the stylistic trappings that we wanted to play with, the artifice that we wanted to play with, the kitsch,
Yeah.
and so the idea was to create this B movie alternate reality and let Kevin swim around in it like a shark. That was the fun of the film for me.
Yeah, and the score too is right in line with that, which is great because it's an audio cue that this is not a typical straightforward production. There's something else going on here. When you're working with someone like Spacey, a legend, all the superlatives come to mind.
Mhm.
When you're seeing him on the set, what does he bring to the production that's different, novel, that you just say, oh, that's
Mhm.
why he can deliver the performances. Does anything jump to mind, or is he more
Well,
of a craftsman on stage?
yeah, it's a great question, and I think for me, what makes Kevin, and what makes him such a captivating personality and such an amazing performer is the intersection of that absurdity we talked about with a intense professionalism.
Mhm.
It's those two things colliding. And he's a very funny person. He's maybe the funniest person I've met. And I think a truly funny person enters a space and they're looking for the comedy. It's
Mhm.
almost like you have a metal detector, and they're waiting for those beeps to start going, and that's
Yeah.
what he'll focus on. That's He found the comedy in the space, and there's that. But he's not just a lighthearted comedian. He's a very intense performer. He comes
Mhm.
prepared. He comes with the pages of the day heavily marked up, and he brings ideas to the table. And he brought some ideas to the table here that I thought were fantastic, and they were all in the interest of how to make this more unusual, weirder, funnier. And so I think that's how I would describe the unique quality of Kevin Spacey is this intersection between a funny person and a very intense performer. And I can tell you a funny story, just kind of in the interest of the absurdity of Kevin and what makes him wonderful in my view. We actually flew him out from Rome, where he'd made the Man Who Drew God, the only other film he'd made previously since his scandal. And so he had been in Rome, and he kind of had this, kind of had the Rome, the Italian culture in his mind, and he insisted that a scooter, a little Italian scooter, be purchased for him by the production. And we were filming in a remote northern California town called Dunsmuir, which has its own history, and it's very, very fascinating little town that dates back to the gold rush. And John F. Kennedy was, actually, known to visit this area in the 50s, and along with Marilyn Monroe, and it's got its own sort of strange history to it. It's a very fascinating little town, but it's very small, very remote. Between takes, Kevin would be seen driving around his little Italian Vespa. And the locals would just see him go by. There goes Kevin Spacey on a little scooter, So this is now the stuff of legend in this small town, as you might imagine.
Yeah, it's one thing for you and the people who are financing the film to say, okay, we're going to go with Kevin Spacey. We know that we know the baggage, we get that. But when you're on the set and there's cast and there's crew, not everyone may be on board. Did you, as the director, kind of pull people aside or make a general statement or say, hey, I know there are different opinions here, but this is the movie we're making? What did you have any prep like that, or do you just kind of go full steam and if someone had a problem, they could come to you?
So we actually wheeled him out each morning wearing a Hannibal Lecter mask, and we thought it was best to take as many precautions as possible and keep everyone safe. Now, the funny thing about Kevin on this show is, given the infamy and all the bad things that have been written about him. He was a consummate gentleman, and actually it was quite a mundane. I don't want to say mundane, but it was an uneventful production as far as anything scandalous goes. And he had family on set. He had his sister on set with him. He had his young niece on set with him. We had he actually insisted that his niece have a director's chair made with her name on it, and she's sitting there behind the camera. So that was the Kevin that the crew saw. Now, of course, people have their own ideas about Kevin going in, and we had, for example, our first AD dropped out of the production prior to starting due to some reservations about working with Kevin. So people may read things online, they may come to their own conclusions, and they may feel that it's not for them. And I of course respect that. Everyone is entitled to come to their own conclusions and act as they will. The crew we had was vetted and were on board, and they had a great experience with Kevin.
Yeah. Having gone through this entire process from the casting to the controversy to the film itself, it's out now. When we talk about the whole, how do we process actors who have troubled pasts, or how do we, do we watch the content? If Woody Allen is under fire, do we hire him? Do we watch his movies? Do we censor them?
Yeah.
There are some legitimate arguments here. And if an actor does behave badly and is caught and is convicted, then, it goes to a different level. But do you have a fresh appreciation for this conversation? Obviously it's a very personal decision on everyone's part.
Sure.
I could love Woody Allen and maybe dislike if he did something,
right,
but I can still enjoy his movies. Where do you kind of weigh in now on this subject? Because you've really run head first into it.
Yeah, absolutely. We were, Kevin's starting to work again, and we'll see future performances from him. And Peter 5/8 was his first leading role. So we were at the front lines here, and we were taking all the arrows, and we still are to a certain extent. There's been a lot of things written about the production and so forth because we've worked with Kevin. So we've definitely taken the heat. Now, it's in terms of my personal feeling about cancel culture and about working with personalities that may have had some scandal. It really is a case by case thing for me, and there's a spectrum. What frustrates me is when everything gets lumped together and it becomes binary, and it becomes, oh, okay, he's either canceled or uncanceled, and if he's canceled, he should never come back. There are instances, and I've gotten, I don't want to name names, but there are cases of those who have been exposed and canceled that I agree with, and I think their actions have exceeded a threshold of good behavior, and usually that threshold is recognized in the courts. That's really where this should be vetted, as opposed to on social media. So if someone has done something terrible and they're being punished for it, I support that. That's just criminal justice 101. Now, when it comes to Kevin, I don't think he's in that category. I came to that conclusion early, talking with Kevin himself when he was offered the role and he was offered the script, talking with his manager, getting more context than is available on the internet, and really sort of understanding kind of what's going on here. And so aside from being a huge fan of Kevin Spacey and as a film buff, wanting to see him work and wanting to see new performances from Kevin Spacey, and truly believing that he's a rare talent, I also felt that I was given enough assurance. And I think, this has since come to pass after 2 trials on 2 continents. Juries in 2 continents have exonerated him. That he should not be in that category. I mean, I really, there's no cruelty with Kevin. There's no sadism with Kevin. There was no rape. There was, I think what we're talking about is a gay man at the height of his fame, with an active libido, and to cancel him for that is very puritanical in my view.
When you think about this conversation, often there's a guilt by association that goes on.
Yeah.
Have you faced any of that within your professional ranks, where maybe people were treating you differently because you did go ahead and make this movie work with Kevin Spacey?
Absolutely. I mean, I've seen the full spectrum. There's a lot of love and there's a lot of support out there for Kevin, and I hear that and I receive that. A lot of people just say, great to see Kevin working again. How fun to see him on screen. We've been waiting for this. Fantastic. Then there's those that have the opposite perspective, and I've definitely received that heat as well. And going into this, that was always the expectation. Especially if you're the first, if you're going to put Kevin in his first American leading role, you're going to take some heat for it. And I was fully cognizant of that and fully expecting that, and that was indeed the case.
Yeah. Would you go through this whole process again if you could do it again? I mean, any regrets in this?
No regrets. Given the right project, I would certainly love to work with Kevin again. But I won't sugarcoat it. It's definitely been just getting the film released was a challenge. I mean, for what I consider to be a playful, old-fashioned film by design, it really became almost overly controversial. I really felt, it's very, very difficult to get distribution, foreign territories, domestic, very difficult. But we did finally, thanks to the optics changing slightly with the trials, get the film out, get it released. And, we have an irreverent film noir starring Kevin Spacey for people to enjoy.
One thing I noticed about the film is I can't find a review of it anywhere. I looked in Rotten Tomatoes. I did some just basic Google searches. I have to say, I'm a film critic, and I don't like to critique my peers because it seems criticism is subjective at the core.
Sure.
But I have noticed that certain films are kind of pushed aside if the subject matter is not maybe in their wheelhouse, if it's a controversial issue like hiring a Kevin Spacey. Any thoughts on that? Because you could hate this movie, you could love this movie, you can go in between. All are valid, but I haven't seen I
I,
don't know if I've
I
seen
can
any.
I can tell you why that is, Christian. There was a blackout on the film.
Mhm.
We had a limited theatrical run, and we had a premiere, which kicked that
Mhm.
off with Kevin Spacey in attendance. The film was screened for some notable critics and some notable outlets, some
Mhm.
pretty big outlets. The reviews were pulled right before they were set to run,
Mhm.
and so we had, and I'm not sure I'm at liberty to say which critics and which papers,
Yeah, I don't want
but
to get you in trouble, but
yeah, they were pulled, and what was allowed to run in its place was a Rolling Stone hit piece, and we knew Rolling Stone was working on this before they even screened the film. They were antagonistic to the film going back to Cannes when it was
Mhm.
first announced. So they put a culture critic on it and ran a hit piece, and that was allowed to run and become kind of the narrative on the film,
Mhm.
where some notable critics wrote reviews that were pulled by their editors. So come to your own conclusions as to why that is. But it's definitely a film that's going against a narrative, and the narrative is that Kevin is not
Mhm.
supposed to work, and so
Yeah,
we pushed against that, and the response was a blackout. Now,
yeah,
despite that, we had a limited theatrical run in some of our cities. It actually was extended, uh, performing well on streaming, despite this blackout, despite there being a concerted effort by whoever you want to conclude is behind that,
Mhm.
to bury the film. Yeah.
Yeah. One last question. When I was thinking about this movie and Kevin Spacey and the project itself, I thought, I bet Kevin Spacey is so happy to be on a movie set again. Because to me, whatever his personal life is, whatever he's done, he just seems like an actor's actor, like the kind of person who just lives and breathes to be on a set.
Mhm.
And here he is, you've got him on a set.
Yeah.
Did you sense that joy, that sort of sense of relief in his, and maybe it's a personal observation, but that was my thinking when I thought about this film. And did you sense that in any
You're
capacity?
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. He lives for his work. He lives for his work, and he lights up when he's on a set. And when the production approached him with the script, this was my thinking. My thinking was this. This was a man who loves his work, and he wants to work, and he wants to play. He wants
Yeah.
to play make believe. That is his life. And my thinking was, this time in exile must have been very suffocating and very difficult. And so part of the motivation, is to, aside from making this sunshine noir, as I call it, in line with Niagara with Marilyn Monroe and Leave Her to Heaven. I love this idea of an aesthetic that's contrasting with the subject matter. So you have this bright, sunny aesthetic. So
Mhm.
you know, definitely wanted to put Kevin in the sunshine noir, but I also felt strongly that he would love the chance to play again. Would love the chance to play again, and that's exactly what I observed. I mean, you wouldn't seeing him on set, you wouldn't know there was a scandal. You wouldn't know that anything had
Mhm.
happened. This is a performer that just loves being in his element, and that's
Yeah.
how he conducted himself.
Excellent. Well, listen, again, thank you, Michael, for taking the time to share these stories with us. The movie is Peter 58. You can watch it right now on Apple TV, order it up there, or Amazon. Just go to justwatch.com. That's a great resource to find out wherever any kind of movie or TV show is playing at the moment. I use it all the time. I think it's really a helpful tool for movie lovers. And thanks for taking a chance. We all have complicated thoughts about Kevin Spacey and what he was accused of. I understand that. But I at the end of the day, I think that actors should act, and if the legal courts have weighed in on it, I think that should be, for now, the final statement. So I appreciate you taking the slings and arrows, and I suspect you will emerge stronger. And I think that's why you don't regret it, because at the end of the day, it's a story being told, and that's what storytellers do. So thanks again for your time, Michael.
Thank you so much, Christian. I really appreciate it.
Well, that's it for the show this week, the bonus episode, I should say. If you have any thoughts about the interview, if you agree, disagree, want to expand on things a little bit more, maybe you're angry with me, maybe you're happy with me for even having Michael on the show, send me a note. Just write me Christian at hollywoodintoto.com. I really look forward to your thoughts. I think this is a great conversation. I think it's a necessary conversation we should be having. And yeah, the times are complicated and artists often behave badly. Not even talking about Kevin Spacey in particular, but you know the drill. We've all heard people like Alec Baldwin. Yeah, he's got a checkered past, to say the very least. Do we still enjoy their art? Can we watch Woody Allen movies knowing he may have done some unsavory activities? Tough questions, absolutely. But it's a free country, and I like the fact we can ask them. Again, hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you subscribe to the Hollywood in Toto podcast, whether it's here on YouTube, Rumble, iTunes, wherever you're listening or watching. And we will see you next time.